Fifth grade, for this project, you are going to be learning about Japanese notans. You're going to be working with positive and negative space. Let's first talk about space. Space is one of the elements of art, and you can see there in the photo on the right, there's like this really cool chalk drawing on the ground, and it almost looks like there's a new space created in the ground. It almost looks like a hole is there, and that's just an illusion with the drawing. So let's talk about what specifically is space. Space is in every single artwork, and it is the area above, below, between, within, and around the main objects in a piece of art. Space is present in both two-dimensional or flat and three-dimensional or like sculptural pieces of art. What is positive space? Positive space is referring to the shapes or forms or the main objects in an artwork. So when you look at the artwork on the right there, you see, we would be considering that chalice, the yellow item that you see there, that's an actual object. That's the main shape of that artwork. And so that's the positive space in that artwork. And then to the one to the right of that, I don't know if you can see this, but it actually, the black part, if you look, it kind of looks like two faces looking at one another. And in that one, it would be the opposite. It would be those two faces are the positive space, because those are the main objects making up that artwork. And then the opposite of that, what is negative space? Negative space is the space that surrounds main objects. So it's everything else, right? So if the main object is the positive space, the negative space is all of the empty space around it. So it is the empty or non-interesting space between and around main objects. So here in this image on the right, this is the logo for the Pittsburgh Zoo. You can see the positive space would be the tree and the land underneath it and the birds flying in the sky. And then the negative space would be all of the white area, all of the empty space around that. All right, you are going to be working with a combination of different shapes. Shape along with space, those are both elements of art. So when we're talking about shape, there are two main categories of shapes. There are geometric shapes and there are organic or freeform shapes. So you can see the geometric shapes on the left there, squares, circles, all different kinds of polygons, ovals, right? Those are shapes that all, for the most part, have a lot of straight edges, a lot of corners. They're mostly symmetrical, those all are symmetrical. And a lot of names that we recognize and typically talk about in like math class, for example, right? When you're talking about geometry in math. And then on the right-hand side, we have organic shapes or free-form shapes. And those are all of the other kind of shapes that exist, right? Those ones that are really crazy, that don't have names, that just kind of look like blobs, or maybe are even the shape of a particular object you recognize, like the shape of a cloud or the shape of broccoli, or anything that's not geometric is going to fall in that organic or freeform category. When you guys are making your artworks, I want you to incorporate both geometric and organic shapes into your designs. So here's just another image showing the difference between those geometric and organic or freeform shapes. Okay, so what is a Japanese notan? What is Japanese notan art? Notan is a Japanese word that means dark light. In Japanese art, the principle of notan is defined as the interaction between positive light and negative dark space. So there on the right, you can see that is an example of a notan. Okay, so we can see the positive and the negative space kind of interacting together. We have kind of a balance of both of those things, the dark and the light. Positive areas and negative areas in a notan should complement one another. They should make each other kind of stand out. They must coexist without dominating one another. So there's some more really good examples of notans on the right there. So the Eastern culture from which notan arose seeks a more balanced view of the world. The classic yin-yang symbol is a reflection of this desire for balance. So notice that there are equal parts of black and white, or positive and negative space, in the yin-yang. Balance is defined as the equal distribution of visual weight in a composition or in an artwork. And so if you look at the image on the right there, you can have symmetrical balance where things are equally distributed exactly the same on each side of that line, that central axis. Or you can still have balance even if the things are different from one side to the other, but they somehow work to visually balance one another out. And that line down the middle of both of those, that's called the central axis. And it's usually just something that you would have to imagine as a dividing line running down the middle of a piece of art or a portion of art or a shape. And that line can run any way. It can run horizontally or vertically. So we're working towards balance in our artworks. So symmetrical balance means that both sides of an axis line are exactly the same, as you can see here in this artwork. This is called a mandala, right? So whether you draw that line vertically or horizontally, what is on the other side is going to be completely symmetrical or exactly the same as what's on the other side. And like I said before, you can also have asymmetrical balance, meaning if you draw that line vertically down the middle of this artwork, which is Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, you're going to have something totally different from one side to the other, but yet there is a visual balance of dark and light on one side of the artwork and the other. The shapes aren't exactly the same, but there is that different yet equal balance. So what are you making? You're making a Japanese Notan artwork. You're going to be creating that. First step, you are going to be painting a paper. So you can see here in this example, this beautifully painted background paper. We're going to add that. I know some of the artworks I showed you in the beginning were just black and white, but we're going to add a little twist to that and add some color by painting our papers that we glue our Notans down to. Then you'll be designing your balanced Notan designs and then cutting them out and gluing them down together. So some things that you want to remember when you are creating these things is you're trying to create balance. Okay, so I'm going to give you a piece of paper and you're going to try to create that balance of shapes on one side of the paper and the other side as you're designing them. And I'll show you what I mean in my demonstration videos. You're going to be thinking about your positive space where all those main objects are, and your negative space, all that space around those main objects, right? And you want to try to balance that out. You're going to really be working on your cutting skills, trying to make really clean cuts. And I'll talk about some tips and tricks in my demonstration video as well for clean cutting. This is a really good project to focus on improving those cutting skills. And also neat gluing. This is a project a lot about cutting and gluing. So I really want you to focus on those things and try to do your best work that you possibly can do when you are making your Notans. Okay, so that's the end of this presentation. So make sure you go and complete the Google form that has a couple of questions about Notans. That is your virtual assignment for this cycle. So make sure you go ahead and complete that so that you can be done with that assignment and receive full credit for it for this cycle.